Yes, take your pick here of two devices from yesteryear that can now be picked up for a decent price on eBay or similar, brought up to date with the latest Apple or custom ROMs as needed, and thoroughly enjoyed, with 90% of the performance of the latest devices, all without breaking the bank. This being a geek's top five, I've gone for this pure Android device. The screen's not Gorilla Glass, the camera's not that special, there's no micro SD expansion, and so on. But there's also no manufacturer tampering with vanilla Android, which itself is as up to date as humanly possible. Still hanging around my top five because it's still the device best suited to an awful lot of first time smartphone buyers. There's just so much less to fiddle with and generally go wrong, and Apple holds your hand all the way. Shock, horror, Symbian still in the top five, thanks to the excellence of the N8 as a concept and as a superlative bit of Swiss Army knife smartphone hardware, from the best camera ever put into a phone, to the electronic gadgets and adapters, to the still decent screen and decent speaker. You've only got to get to grips with Symbian 3, which isn't that hard, and you're set. Still a good buy, and not too expensive these days. You may argue that this device, the Samsung Galaxy S2, is a predictable number one, and you'd be right. It's brand new and it's the best overall smartphone I've ever handled. It's also one of the most expensive I've ever handled, over £500 SIM-free here in the UK. Ouch. iPhone 4 territory. Yes, you get a lot of phone for your money, but hey, for that ticket, I'd expect gold trim, or at least stainless steel, not easily dented plastic. You can see where I dropped it the other day. And it's 116 grams and only 9 millimeters thick. There's not that much to the Galaxy S2 physically. You have to be slightly geeky to realize where your money is going. It's going into Samsung's R&D labs. The star feature in the Galaxy S2 is a 4.3-inch Super AMOLED Plus display. That's superb. This is the equal of Nokia's new clear black display technology, and yet with higher brightness and higher resolution, so better. Yes, the Galaxy S2 is a little on the large side, but watching videos on this screen is nothing short of sumptuous. Just about every movie format plays, and without glitches or lag. In terms of display technology and size, it's astonishing to see how far we've come since the likes of the 2.6-inch screen Nokia N95 back in 2007. That's only 4 years ago. The front face is just a single button, iPhone style, for waking the Galaxy S2 or taking you back to the home screen, with extra capacitive spots and light up icons for the Android menus and back. There's a volume rocker here on the left, 3.5mm audio on the top, and a power lock button in Samsung's traditional right-hand side spot, which as a right-hander I vastly prefer to the hard to finger and find top spot. On the bottom is micro USB for both data and charging. I do welcome the move to standard ports, but charging does seem rather slow via micro USB. Expect a couple of hours at least to fully charge this beast. What's not here is a camera shutter button. In my opinion, one of the few flaws in this otherwise spectacular smartphone. The camera itself is slightly raised on the rear surface, and I was more worried about the way the camera glass is utterly exposed. There's no recessing of any kind. Given the size of the phone and where supporting fingers naturally lie, expect to have to wipe prints and finger grease off the camera glass before every important photo. And watch out for scratches too. This is where it rests when you put it down on a desk. And that's basically it. I mean, that's the only hardware negatives out of the way. From here on in, it's dual core goodness. Two 1.2 gigahertz processors, a gigabyte of RAM, quad band 3G, Bluetooth 3, DLNA, tethering, Wi-Fi file sharing. Look, just go and read the specs for yourself. Suffice it to say, this is cutting edge in many, many ways, especially considering the size. And look, with the battery out, just nothing to it. I have no idea how they fit it all in. The Galaxy S2 runs Android 2.3.3, almost the very latest version, and the TouchWiz foreskin over the top isn't too intrusive. The main change is there's an iPhone-style dock for 3 apps plus applications, with the latter being paged left to right, and there's the ability to edit the pages, again like the iPhone, dragging and dropping or merging into folders. The best of both worlds? Well, could be. Anyway, there's plenty to fiddle with and customize. As usual with manufacturer widget sets, most of them don't really add anything to vanilla Android and its market. The email one offers a nicely sized home screen view of your last 3 messages from as many accounts as you have set up, though I still prefer Android's own Gmail client overall, being simpler and faster and less buggy. However, one of Samsung's extra widgets here is surprisingly useful. The photocentric Associated Press one is pretty, cycles through headlines, and really draws you in to find out what's going on in the world. A set of hubs introduced various commercial services somewhat intrusively, games from Mobage, music tracks from 7 Digital, and newspapers, books and magazines from Press Display, Kobo and Zinio respectively. At least the social hub doesn't try and part you from your money, trying to integrate Facebook, Twitter, MySpace and LinkedIn content into one single stream. It does this, but slowly and erratically. I found, for example, the dedicated Android Twitter app 10 times faster. Web browsing is speedy, as you might expect, the fastest I've ever browsed full desktop sites on a phone, though I kind of missed intelligent reflowing of text. I thought Android browser was supposed to handle this by now. One nice extra Samsung has thrown in is a licensed copy of Polaris Office, previously only available for Honeycomb tablets, I think, providing surprisingly decent WYSIWYG Office file editing, including PowerPoint slides and 2007 file formats. Nice. Text entry on the proprietary Samsung Virtual QWERTY throughout the Galaxy S2 is excellent, with a few exceptions. I hated the way I had to swap keyboards manually just to get a comma in my sentences. Am I missing something? Switching to the built-in swipe keyboard, so long tap, input method, swipe. There you are, you do get a comma, but then you have to get RSI in your finger from all the gestures backwards and forwards. Oh well, I'm sure extra keyboards are available in the Android market and you can experiment. But onto the device itself. Battery life is surprisingly good thanks to a battery and OLED-friendly, predominantly black theme, and thanks, I suspect, to some really clever power-saving optimizations among the dual processors. Yes, you'll still have to charge it every night, but you won't run out before you get home in the evening unless you really, really hammer it, thanks to the 1650 mAh battery. Multimedia playback is a joy, as I mentioned earlier. Even the speakers are of reasonable quality, if a little quiet. Maybe a bit more oomph needed, Samsung. Loading up media proved tricky because the usual USB mounting options have been hidden away. I have to hire a detective agency to find them. They're here in wireless and networks. There's also Keyr's Air, which offers up most of the Galaxy S2's data and media types via an HTML web page, which you then connect to over your home Wi-Fi. It sounds rather strange, but it does work, and will be understandable, most importantly, to newbies. I did have issues with music playback here on the Galaxy S2. Surely it has to be a Samsung bug. Most of my music collection's artist tags weren't recognised. They all ended up here under unknown artist. Basically, it couldn't handle my iTunes AAC encoded music files, so I had to resort to a third-party application, a PowerAmp, which recognised them just fine, and I've got my whole music collection back. Fingerprints on the glass apart, the Galaxy S2's camera is typical Samsung and not bad at all, especially considering the thickness available here. 8 megapixel stills come out surprisingly well, even if they're nowhere near N8 territory, and there are a huge number of options to fiddle with if you're into that sort of thing. I just wish there was a shutter key though. Having to stop and change my grip on an already droppable phone in order to try and tap the shutter icon is just plain annoying. Video capture is at 1080p or 720p, both of which work well with continuous autofocus as shown here. Rather curiously, the default resolution is 720 by 480, possibly to stop new users using up copious amounts of the 16GB internal disk with their 200 megaminute 1080p footage. Overall, clarity is limited by the size and quality of the camera optics, but it's still perfectly good enough for most casual users. There's a lot to like about the Galaxy S2. Samsung has thrown the kitchen sink and all into the software. Aside from stuff already mentioned, there's a full file manager, a somewhat weedy task manager, a video player, a photo editor, a video maker, a personal GPS-linked diary app, a Samsung mini app store, BBC iPlayer in the UK, and a bevy of update options. Although major firmware still has to be applied through the Windows-based Keys software, and one such was available immediately, I applied it a day after buying the device, several app updates popped up over the air too, as did a camera firmware patch. It was kind of cool and scary seeing this being applied in real time. Rather gimmicky is that Samsung has also licensed Vlingo, tying it to a double tap of the home button. So when driving, you can in theory dictate memos, send text messages and so on, if your car is quiet enough, all with minimal need to touch the phone. Recognition was impressive in my office, but completely impossible when actually driving with road noise, etc. rather foiling the point of it all, really. Note that Google's own voice recognition is also available in virtually every virtual keyboard on the device, so I'm not quite sure of the point of Lingo. Look, I could go on. There's this totally crazy new zooming method using accelerometer-based gestures. That'll never catch on. There's built-in screenshot support. Yay! There's HDMI out via micro USB if you buy the right mobile high-definition link adapter. Samsung has given the Galaxy S2 as its flagship smartphone everything it can possibly think of, giving you, the user, multiple options for doing everything. This will confuse the heck out of newbies, but for you, the seasoned phone show viewer, you'll simply appreciate that everything you'll ever want to do with an Android smartphone can be done with this device. Look, take it, rip out Samsung's widgets and all the bits you don't want, put on your Android favourites, customise the heck out of the home screens and revel in just about the best, fastest, prettiest smartphone hardware in the world right now. The Galaxy S2 isn't for everyone. It's large, it's expensive, and quite possibly complex and confusing. And yes, there are a few bugs, but Samsung do seem to have mended their ways with regards to updating firmware regularly. The Galaxy S2 is still perfect, though, for many phone show viewers, I suspect, and it's a worthy number one in my top 5. Just make sure you grab an aftermarket case for trips out of your cushioned office environment. This is far too expensive and droppable to be used commando out in the real world, in my opinion.